Hey guys, still here and welcome back to Wargame Brendryen. Before I kick off this replay analysis, I want to ask you to check your subscription status, because recently I found that a lot of people don't seem to be subscribed anymore, or are not getting notifications for some reason or another. So please have a look, see if you are still subscribed. If you are, great. If not, please resubscribe, because YouTube is up to some funny stuff. Now, it has been a while since I did replay analysis. I used to do these several times a week, and then I basically stopped. And one of the reasons that I stopped was that I started playing ranked, and I got absolutely crushed in ranked, which also crushed my confidence to do replay analysis. I felt like I was no longer in a place where I was allowed, if you will, by myself to do these. Simply because I just got so completely humiliated by the ranked experience that I thought, geez, you're actually pretty terrible at this game. So that was the reason for me not to be doing replay analysis anymore. And then I got a mail from Th3 over here, which is an opponent that I fought. This is the game where Sparky was operating with South Africa over there. I was trying to operate in the middle, and Gosrith was trying to operate over here. And Th3 asked, how can I push in here, or how can I make a move on Foxtrot, or Fedor for him. He was fighting Gosrith over there, and he is going to make an assault on Fedor, and then preferably the next sector as well, since we're playing Conquest. So let's have a look at what is his opener. What does he have? He has his CV over here. If you're playing with 3 people, of course, you're going to have a spare CV, so having a CV over there is not something that he bought. He seems to be opening up with Recon Infantry. I know that these are Specialny. You got HEGMs in there, more HEGMs, Infantry of medium rank, Infantry here, and more HEGMs. The opener, I think, has too many HEGMs, especially considering that there's 2 T-72Ss in here. When you're fighting in an area like this, I would probably not take any kind of heavy tank like that at all. The reason is because from here you might be able to fire at the enemy as they're coming down that road, but there are quite a few tree lines that will obscure your vision. Similar, HEGMs, you could have them here, but they would immediately be in contact with the enemy over there, so I probably wouldn't put them in here. That leaves you with the building here, which is kind of obstructed by the building in front of it. The building here, same deal, you're getting very close to the buildings, so you're going to be facing off against infantry, and even if you aren't, you probably won't be able to get a shot beyond anything in this very narrow cone of vision. And on top of that, you can get jumped by units as they come down here. So, when it comes to the opener here, I would probably not take HEGMs at all, nor the T-72Ss. And as I have been experiencing and ranked myself, if the opener isn't good enough, then you can lose the game in the first 2 to 3 minutes. Now I'm going to be playing this from his perspective, so even though I can switch it to neutral, I'm going to base my vision on what he can see. Dropping off your Conquerors over here is not a great idea. Your line of sight is being obstructed by your own MiG-912 drop over there. If something comes forward from that smoke screen, you're immediately putting your Conquerors at risk. And these are pretty expensive and potentially hard to replace. So be careful with these gentlemen and don't drop them off over there. The Specialny I probably would have dropped over here if possible, because they are pretty good at fighting in towns. And that's, considering their RPG-26, quite the understatement. Then you got your Stanec over there, you got more infantry coming up, and since these are mechanized units, they're a little slower than the OT-64s, and then the T-72Ss are same speed. And here we run into trouble, because Gosrith is not sitting around and waiting for action. His units are panicked, because they are, well, worried, panicked, shaken, because they had to drive through the napalm, but immediately, with fire support from, I think it's the LAVs, as well as, I believe these are KPZs, or the MBT-70, since he was playing NORAD. They immediately wipe out your HEGMs. So with those lost, you immediately have fewer options to deal with these tanks. And then your T-72Ss, which are currently on the road, are not really in a good position to fire on anything except the Marines. So in this case, you cannot do anything against his fire. And instead of dropping off your infantry here, which gives you cover and thus damage reduction, you're moving them into the forest. Over here, the Conquerors. This is dangerous. This is very dangerous, because you're bunching up your units a lot. And because of that, if Gosrith would have sent in a Nighthawk, or a Deagle, which in case of NORAD is not entirely unreasonable to expect, you could have lost a lot of your units here, which you still haven't offloaded. Specialny are caught out in the open. Your mortar up here is on the front line. The map here isn't too big, you can keep your mortar close to the fob. Oh, and this area is completely open. This is completely open. Since this was a 3v3 lobby, you could have seen what the other people were playing. If you see somebody playing South Africa, be prepared for flanking attacks. That is what South Africa excels at. Now, your teammate dropped off a Spetsnaz VMF over there, so you do have some vision. But if Sparky wanted to, he could rush down this road, circumvent the entirety of Fedor, and go over this road and enter your base. That is a grave risk. Now, with your reconnaissance depleted, except for the Metzger over there and the Specialny, your T-72Ss have fewer targets, and they don't exactly know what they're shooting at. And a T-72S can take a beating, but not that much. You have 18 frontal armor, a Mexus can pen 17. So at full range, or at best range of the T-72, you are impenetrable by the Mexus. Same thing goes for the KPZ, I think. The thing is, you're not at max range. You could have probably won against both of these tanks, because you can pen 20, and these things have 14 frontal armor, so it's basically 2 to 3 shots, maybe 4 if you miss a few. And you would have had a Mexus down. And these things have a pretty good rate of fire at 8 rounds a minute, and you would have been invulnerable, but you're too close to the enemy. And because of that, your T-72s are at risk, and there are units moving around here. We've got Canadian rifles over there. The T-72S is just too close in general. And because of this, it dies. Now your Motorschützen are under pressure from Texas and just have nowhere to go. Over here you got the Mi-35 coming in. You're able to take out some of his vehicles, that is excellent. Because those fire support units really needed to go. Those MBT-70s. Now this is interesting. MiG-912 flies in and drops the thermobarics. These are napalm bombs, for those of you who haven't encountered them yet. They explode first for 12 HE, and then they start a fire. Not a bad move, but you don't have a follow-up. So in this case, yes, you can use them, especially since you have them. They're pretty much used as containment. But beyond that, you're not really going to gain that much from the airstrike. Over here, and I'm not sure if your team discussed who was supposed to be operating here, because this is Fire King 23 with his triple Twardy. If you don't have this road secure, with, for example, an HEGM or a tank or something like that, then you can expect to get flanked here, as I am trying to do. I got the 2 Merkavas and an HVMS, mostly trying to get closer to the Twardys, but instead I end up being able to shoot some of your units, provided I can spot them. You Specialny are outspotting me, so you're doing that very well there. I didn't have any AT or any anti-air over there. All right, the battle develops. You're bringing in new units from the BMP-2s. Nice unit to have over here, especially with an autocannon, but Gosrith is already here. Considering how he was pushing, it's hard to recommend any particular counter that you could have immediately called in. The Mi-35 might be questionable, because yes, it killed some infantry, yes, it killed tanks, which means that Gosrith could just tank his way down the road, but that helo is 90 points. These things are 20 plus, let's say 20 for infantry, so you could have ordered these earlier. I'm not sure if you're floating points, and if so, how many. Drop off here, because you know something's in here. There we go. Motorschützen 90. There we go. That's 20 points, so that is indeed 40 points per combo. I would try and get to these buildings as quickly as possible. Because once the enemy has the building... Oh dear. Once the enemy has the buildings over here, it is difficult to get into. And you have your fire support. You have your BMP too. So that autocannon will suppress any infantry. Especially with an Mi-35 supporting. You're going to be able to suppress any infantry and you can take the buildings. The Mi-35 here is a fresh one. And I do not agree with buying that unit. Because you have very, very few units on the ground, and an Mi-35 has very little staying power. So that Mi-35 would probably have been better spent in a Specialny, maybe over there, or some other cheap recon unit over the flank. And potentially an ATGM. Something, yeah, of course, the Mi-35 also has ATGMs, and Gosrith is on the receiving end of one. But an ATGM, let's say over here, could have fired at the tanks as they were trying to cross that road. Or that, not that road, but that area down there. The BMP is getting spotted. The Mi-35, very much a weapon system that I would consider jump and go. So you have fired a few weapons or a few missiles, you fired a couple of rocket pods, get out. Take cover here, behind the forest, and pop out when you need to. If you have the unit selected, press Z and it's going to go into either hover low, which it's currently doing. It's just a few feet above the ground. Or going into hover high, which would mean it can peek over the forest. Now your BMP is taking fire. The Mi-35 is now getting hit by mortar fire. It's getting stunned. Because of that, it's not going to be as accurate with its ATGMs as it normally would be. But you do get a hit on the Mexes. Unfortunately, the Mexes is pretty well protected. And you lose vision. Now Gosrith comes back with a DAP. So now it's definitely time to get out. Out. Faster. Yeah. You kind of deserve that, because you kept the Mi-35 there for too long. The Lazur comes in. I think to kill the DAP. And you got more infantry that you spot over there. Schnetska, okay. What other units are coming in? Because it's awfully quiet. Gosrith moves up with more infantry. He takes the building. This is what I was kind of worried about. This is also pretty risky. You're firing your pram from pretty close next to your CV. And that means that if this CV, or sorry, if this pram is going to get counter artillery fire, so somebody tries to kill the pram, your CV could be at risk. If they fire mortars, you'll be fine. If they fire something bigger, MLRS, you are not fine. And you will lose the CV, which is another 100 loss. And on top of that, it would give us a +2 instead of +1. There you go, there's your counter battery fire. This impact was quite close to the CV. It didn't actually get it, but it's risky. Schnetska, this close to the front line, I would probably have used Specialny. Just to make sure that I have a bit more stealth, because these things have medium stealth and Specialny have very good stealth, so they're harder to see. If you are going to use it in a role like this, turn the autocannon back on. Especially as you're trying to drop off infantry from your Mi-17. There. In this case, I would probably have the Mi-17 drop off the infantry here. So let's say closer to the crossroads. Because once the infantry is on the ground, you can immediately use those S-13 rocket pods against the Canadian rifles, and they would very quickly start melting. And this is also a risk. So Gosrith has his anti-air, and considering that you're using quite a few planes, you're motivating him to bring more anti-air. And as such, your Mi-17 dies. Had you been over here, you might have been outrange a little bit longer, potentially long enough not to have been at risk. Comes the smoke screen, pulling back the BMPs. Mi-35, you know that there's a Chaparral there, or some sort of anti-air unit. Not a good idea to push in with an Mi-35. There. 35 dies. What we got there? Probably a Maxis. No, it's KPZ. Or the MBT-70 as the Americans called it. No! It's not that important. You don't need it dead that well, or that quick. I understand that you're trying to kill the anti-air. It makes sense. It has been shooting your helos. It needs to go. Your ally, Rust84, is using helos. These, by the way, I would very much have liked to seen split up, because one Chaparral can impact one and splash the other. So if you see something like this, just make sure that your ally splits them up. There is something to be said for taking down the NTR, I suppose, because these helos would have been useful, and they're probably being kept back because the NTR is still a threat. But you didn't get it. That's the problem. There's M106s. Oh, take your mortar. Take your mortar. This is free real estate right here. Take these things down. If you see them, take them down. The Chaparral is currently trying to kill M24D over there. Hits. Reloads. MBT-7, go. You could have killed this, the Chaparral, as it was reloading. Because it was just sitting there. I think Gosrith was occupied elsewhere. You can see him using his mortar, so he was probably picking a target for those. And because of that, both the mortars were stationary and the Chaparral were stationary, so make sure you hotkey this unit. Select it, press Control and any of your numbers, and then you can have it under that hotkey. Very handy to have it efficiently deployed. No. No, 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 no. The Saria over here is not really what you need right now. The Saria is a high-end tank killer. It's something that you bring in when you're struggling to kill a super heavy. Or when there is a super heavy. It might not even be struggling, but it needs to go. There isn't. There's no super heavy. This is a fantastic unit against tanks. I think you might have called it out to deal with the MBT-70 over there, but I'm not sure. It just goes to show that you need more recon here again. Good. You're engaging the mortars. Excellent. Just remember to move after you fire your own mortar. There's the 912 again. Barak tries to chase down your Lazur and gets it. You're overall too reliant upon air. Because of all this air power, it means that you have a lot of points invested there and not on the ground. And you're starting to see the results of not having a lot of ground units. These motor shoots in over here, probably pull them back, because you're just going to get killed. You have no way to move forward, especially if there's a Bradley bearing down on you. Move the pram back. Fighting or firing at this town right now is not going to give you anything. It might hurt the infantry a little, but it's very unlikely to kill it, and all you're doing is giving away the location of your own pram. And you know that there are mortars somewhere over here, the M106s. So you're just giving the enemy more information about where your pram is. It's not really what you need. Oh, there you go. Moving it out. Good. CV pulled back. Not too far. Good. What you got there? V150. Okay, ATGM coming in. The question that I have is why? Because you don't have vision. You'll have the killer, but you won't have the spotter. So you cannot actively see what needs killing with an ATGM. And this area over here, still wide open. South Africa loves that. There comes the Barak again, and this time around I do kill your Saria. The Saria and most NTGM planes only come in when they actually have vision on the target. You get in, you kill the target, you get out. You don't keep it loitering. What you got there? There's the Chaparral again. Could have been a fairly easy and chunky kill for the Conquerors. You're getting spotted. I think Gosrith's V150 is over there. And I know that I can switch to neutral. The reason I'm not doing it is because I want to see his kill-death ratio and what units he lost to what. Ooh, expensive. Yep, there's the Chaparral. That was not news to you. You knew the Chaparral moved into position there. So sending in an MI2 recon bird is going to end it getting killed. This was a far better pick. You don't need both. Just a Specialny here. Considering that you're probably struggling to get points, don't call in the recon bird. There comes my Siphon, I think. Yep. Who is mortaring that position? Oh, Okay, that's expensive. That is 4 times 130 points, so a total of 520. This is ridiculously expensive. I'm not going to look at Rust 84's gameplay too much, but this is not necessarily helpful. Because, sure, it's great to have this position suppressed, and you might actually kill something. Is that the Shep? No, it's the V150. This is the one that was spotting your OT-64. It's nice that this position is suppressed, but right now it's not that critical. I'd say it's more critical to get control of this town back. So that's where I would ideally call in my ally to start firing with his 520 point stack. This is something I've seen you do a few times now. The Pram S is currently firing at the position where the infantry was, not where it is. Ideally, fire at where the infantry either is, so if it's stationary inside a building, or where it's going to be. And the infantry came in from, I don't know, there or there. So they're probably going to be in this building or here or here. They're not going to stay there where they are. Here comes the Siphon. You're calling out the BMP-2. I would strictly do this. Because your Motorschützen 90 are just sitting here doing nothing. And your autocannon doesn't really have that much to do here. I do very much like the Mi-2 on the flank here. That is very useful. There is, however, a threat that is about to materialize. And that is South Africa. Because I believe that Sparky was pulling a funny on you here. You're looking around with the Mi-2. Very good. Here comes the Lazur. What are you trying to kill? Whoops. Patriot's still active. Patriot took no prisoners. Okay, let's have a look at your defensive line. You got an autocannon, you got short-range anti-tank infantry / shock infantry. You got your ATGM, you got your spotter, you got more infantry, and they're getting spotted from the town. You got a smokescreen over there. That's Gosrith's attack. So you know that something is happening over here. Unfortunately, most of your responsive power either is or was airborne, and because of that, you cannot really call it in. Your ally still seems hell-bent on losing his helos, and Gosrith is eager to oblige. Use the Pram in that. KT just saved your bacon over there. Here come the Achsarits. Chaparral is dealing with the other Mi-24D. These are not your units. It seems like Fire King was trying to help you out, but he might have gotten distracted in the middle. I just don't know exactly where. Because these units are not in a great position yet. An issue that you also have here is that you cannot really do that much against the Mexes. The MBT-70 is pretty nasty. Oh, this is beautiful. The MBT-70 is nasty because it has an autocannon and a main gun and they can fire at the same time. The Specialny, however, immediately proceed to give it an optical failure, which is fairly rare, and thus the tank is blind for 2 minutes. This is your opportunity to strike because Gosrith hasn't noticed. There you go. Good kill. It seems like you're very much defensive over here, which is fine, considering that you're getting pushed by, at this point, not just Gosrith, but also by me. So you're having 2 players barrel down on you. In that case, potentially a tank, cheaper tank, would have been useful in a position over here. Because if he started rushing you with infantry, then you could have had a few shots from here without being at risk too much. There is something in here, you know that. Potentially riflemen, but a tank generally can pull out of here fast enough. There comes the tank. A tank can generally pull out of that position fast enough to reverse to do some damage. The Moderna. Let's discuss the Moderna. Pretty good tank. Decent option, but overly expensive. A couple of standard T-72s would have done it. Here's the reason. The T-72s have 4 HE, and that's what I would be looking for in this situation, because I need to be dealing with infantry. Because there is infantry definitely coming forward from here. We are, and we being Gosrith and myself, are trying to push you out of this sector. So that means infantry. One Moderna can only fire 8 rounds a minute. A base T-72 is going to cost you 40 points. Let's say they can fire, I don't know, 7 rounds a minute. But you can buy 4 of them for the same price. So that means you can fire a lot more rounds and very, very quickly deal with infantry. And Gosrith so far hasn't been using anything heavier than cheap stuff. You got the KPZ-7, sorry, the MBT-70, as well as the, oh, what are they called? The Mexes, and that is about it. Beyond that, there's nothing too serious. What happened to the MI2? Did I kill that, potentially? Uh-oh. Drakon kills the Mi-35. Mi-35, too close to the front line, doing nothing. We were just picking... There we go. We were just picking off your helos one by one. You can see Gosrith just sort of probing your line with an empty supply truck, or an empty transport truck. And I'm doing the same thing with a couple of Shermans. Just trying to see what's in here. And Shermans aren't ideal, but I thought this position was less occupied than it was. So I thought I could just basically drive in there and then start harassing the transports that you sent forward. Here's a Ram Recce. Immediately gets killed off by the Conquerors. Good shot. You didn't strictly need the Conquerors for that. So arguably you could have had it turned off until a bigger threat arose. Yep, and here we go. This is why I would have wanted a quad stack of T-72s or a couple of smaller ones. Because your Moderna is kind of expensive to risk. And because of that, you don't have any kind of fire support. Whereas you could have easily picked off the Erics as well as the Drakon because it is out in the open. Has our offensive happened yet? No. We also got quite a few units not unloaded here. The SPW is there. And the Mi-17 also unload. Here. Oh, these guys could have been melted by the Mi-17. Very, very easy kill. You know that there's a Drakon over there, but hover the helo somewhere over here, and you're very likely to just kill off the Roveite without any kind of worries. Any threat. Why is this in here? Did you pack that back up? There. Oh, lekker pakota. Okay. Interesting. See, this is what I'm trying to have you do. I'm trying to have you bring fire support for your infantry. The Achsarit, in my case, are, when it comes to firepower, not great. There's just a couple of machine guns, but they are extremely survivable. So I was hoping that they would absorb fire from more dangerous units to my infantry, such as an Mi-17. Also, a tank would have probably fired quite a few rounds into an Achsarit before it goes down. Right now you're fighting infantry on infantry, but you don't have a fire support vehicle. You don't have anything that suppresses the Roveite, you don't have anything that kills the Roveite, and because of that, you are not really doing a fair fight. You're at a disadvantage here. Here comes the Brendryen. There goes one Achsarit. The second gets pulled back. Yeah, the second Achsarit survived. If this Moderna is not blinking, we can see it, and that is not great for you. Also, this is not good. This is really not good, because Sparky was operating over there, captured your fob. And here's why. Nothing here. There was an Mi-2. It died. And that allowed Sparky's Roycat 105s as well as a Roycat 76 to just barge in and kill. And the BTR 90s and or this thing killed off the Roycat 76. But your base is now in trouble. You don't have a spare CV. Fire King surrenders. There is a spare CV here. But... oh, you got a transport here, the KT. Unfortunately, Fire King just left, so that means that Rust got the units. The player at the top of the team list always gets the units of the player that leaves. The unit over here, not that likely to make it back to base very quickly either, unless it was going to be using the Zil. I think both... yeah, you got both the Roycats killed, your team did, because the BTR 90s did. But this never should have been allowed to happen. And this is why I said earlier in the video, if you see South Africa on the enemy team, expect some shenanigans like this. Especially on a map that has this many forests. This much side opportunity or flanking opportunity for South Africa is fantastic. And now you have a lot of BMP2s coming in. Probably to try and counter whatever happens here. Here comes Gosrith and his fire starters. He loves napalm tanks. And he's not afraid to use them. So 2 Zippos are going to torch a lot of this stuff. And except for the Moderna, there's not a whole lot that you have to work with. That's the problem. Don't move to the front line. I positioned a Dorban LR over here. And your teammate is still trying to move up. So that was the plan. Anything and everything that moves to resupply this sector in, let's say, this cone of vision, and of course to a range about here, gets hit by a spike. And the BTRs are taking a lot of it. But again, we are at +4 at this point, so there's not a whole lot you can do. At this point you have lost the battle, but arguably you lost the battle far earlier. Because you did not have the right unit composition to take Federal. I would go with more infantry, potentially more BMP2s, because they are pretty survivable with full frontal armor. Not against the onslaught of MT7s and Nexus, but they are still capable of taking a few hits, potentially getting the infantry to where they need to go. And then you know, okay, I got some infantry in here in the town, and I'm able to just bring whatever I need to try and start killing those MBT-70s. When it comes to your kill-death ratio, I think we're going to see quite a few planes and helos that got lost. Actually, let's first go over the kills. T-72S is a 120-point tank. So you try and get as many points as you get kills from it. Oh, sorry. Yeah. You try and kill something worth 120 points combined, and this isn't it. This is 4 transports, an LVTP-7A1 transport for the Marines and the Marines themselves, and that was it. The other T-72S did even worse, because you're not using it as it, in this case for this tank, should be used, which is not a short-range fire supporter, but more of a, let's say, a bit of a sniper, especially standoff-ish tank when it comes to dealing with the mexes, because you had the advantage there, but you gave it up because you closed in too much. Mi-35 killed off the mexes as expected. This made the price of the mexes, or this made the price of the Mi-35 worth it. It also relieved some pressure on your infantry, insofar as you still had anything left at that point. Specialny killed the Merkava 1 of mine. The 912. This is not really telling the full story of the 912. Because yes, it only killed the Canadian Rifles and the Rangers, but it was instrumental in slowing down our push. And because of that, it took Gosrith a little bit longer to get to the town in Elena. And that could have been time that you used to put your units into position. But you got a bit greedy, and because of that, your units were caught out of position and got killed off. At least that's my read on the situation. The Lazur took care of the DAP, yes. OT-64 took care of an Eric's, that's good. Conquerors took care of a Mexes and the Ram. This is a pretty good kill. And the Moderna, not great. Not great. I think the 4 T-72s could have done a lot more work for you. Losses. Surprise, surprise. Tank, 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 IFV, tanks, 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 tanks. Your biggest threat, especially early game, because this does go chronologically, was tanks. And you didn't really have an answer because your Conquerors died early on and your T-72s died, well, not too much later. So if you would have wanted to do something like that, potentially open with the Moderna, yes, it's risky, But by opening with the Moderna, you can you can outshoot anything, especially the Mexes and the MBT-70s. Of course, you don't know what the enemy team is going to bring and where. Still, the autocannon would have also been useful to suppress and or kill enemy infantry. And then I'm seeing Chaparral, DAP, aircraft, helos, they're all getting killed. Lazur, Seria, MI2, Patriot, killed the Lazur. Be more careful with your planes, because you had these things out patrolling. While that's not necessarily a bad thing, if there's a Patriot around, it's not really a safe operation. It's not really a safe area to patrol, so try not to do that. As for the rest of your kills, this was more late game. See, there's the Strop getting killed off by the Zippo of all things. It's just mostly tanks that you're struggling with. So be a bit more mindful of where you place your HGMs and if they are the right units for the job in the first place. And aside from that, not necessarily reach for the most expensive tank, unless you want to go very heavy with the, where is it, the Moderna. But the cheaper fire support, just a couple of T-72s, especially later game against all that infantry, would have been useful. It would have been very annoying for Gosrith to deal with, because he had the Mexes and he had the MBT-70s. I'm not sure if he had anything heavier in this particular deck. Alright, I hope this was useful. I hope that you can take some of these points into your future battles. If you have any further suggestions for Tater Tot, guys, let me know down below in the comments. Of course, this is just my read on the situation, and yours might be entirely different. I am very much looking forward to seeing what sort of constructive criticism you have for Tater Tot. To close off, Tater Tot says it is sometimes difficult for a newer player to get a game against, as he wrote, higher caliber opponents. I am honored to be called that, even though I don't consider myself very good. If you have a newer player, or if you see a newer player on the enemy team, don't immediately kick them out, because they have to learn somehow. So you can, if you want to be a really nice guy on the internet, or girl, there are 3% of my viewers which are female. If you want to be a really nice person, take somebody like this under your wing and say, hey, do you want to join my team, potentially my Discord or whatever voice comm you're using, and help them out. Just either voice chat or text icons in the game, whichever you prefer, but stuff like that can help them get better. Don't immediately kick them from the game or kick them from your lobby. I get that you want to have a good game, and this might be a bit of a pushover or kicking puppies, but we all had to start somewhere. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what your thoughts are down below, and I'll see you soon for more videos.